Geoeconomics in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, trade and development perspective from Bangladesh. We have our respected chief guest, Dr. Shamsul Alam sir, Honourable State Minister, Ministry of Planning, Government of Bangladesh. And we have our moderator, our respected Dr. Mustafizur Rahman sir, Distinguished Fellow, Center for Policy Dialogue. Our keynote presenter today, Dr. M. A. Rajak, Chairman RAPID and Director PRI. We have Mr. Felix Kolbitz, Resident Representative FES Bangladesh, and a group number of panelists today. So I welcome you all to this important webinar on geoeconomics. As you know, geoeconomics is a new emerging discipline. Lots of things are happening around the world. It is very important from trade and environmental perspective. World trade and other major forces of globalization are now passing a turbulent time. With the advent of COVID-19, the world is experiencing the rise of geoeconomics power play. So global and regional economic powers are using various economic and trade policy instruments to promote their national interest and geopolitical influence. These in turn undermine the rules-based multilateral trading system led by World Trade Organization. Even before the pandemic, the world was facing sluggish economic activities. The onset of COVID-19 crisis, tariff wars, vaccine diplomacy, recent developments in Afghanistan are critical events shaping today's the relationship between the regional and global powers. So in Bangladesh, we did not have many studies on geoeconomics. We welcome FES support on this. It is an evolving phenomena. Given the rise of geoeconomic tension, lot of works is needed for informed policy making decisions. So there is a need for integration of trade policy, international relations, and trade negotiation objectives. That means our policymakers in the Ministry of Finance, Commerce, and Foreign Affairs in particular will have to work in collaboration with academic institutions and other think tanks. As Bangladesh is set to graduate from the group of LDCs, we would expect to consolidate our economic success while exploring new trading opportunities amid the uncertain global trade environment. So today's webinar is a small testing ground for that kind of collaboration and policy discourse that Bangladesh should be having in a regular basis. Last year from RAPID, we did a discussion with Economic Reporters Forum members on some conceptual issues of geoeconomics. Then this paper has been finalized in May 2021, facilitating this focus group level, expert group level discussion. The main sphere of RAPID activities is to engage in development research and advocacy with the objective of contributing to policy discourse and awareness building. So RAPID undertakes selected programs and research and advocacy. We are committed to undertaking the disseminating evidence-based, policy-oriented socio-economic research among public policymakers, development partners, entrepreneurs, and academic community. Today, we would like to thank our chief guest, Dr. Shamsul sir, Honourable State Minister of Planning, who is recognized as the main architect of national plan documents such as 5-year plans, Delta Plan, Perspective Plan, LDC graduation strategies, National Social Security strategies, SDG progress reports, and so on. Our today's discussion before him carries special significance because we think our trade and policy mindset perspective may have to be transformed in significant manner given Bangladesh forthcoming LDC graduation and Asia, particularly in our South Asian subcontinent, being an important sphere of geopolitical and geoeconomic dynamics. Today, keynote presenter Dr. Rajak is a trade economist who is known home and abroad for his excellent analytical works. Our moderator, Dr. Mustafizur Rahman sir, a renowned trade economist who himself has undertaken enormous amount of work in the area of international trade, finance, WTO issues, bilateral and multilateral trade relations, and economic development issues. So I would like to welcome you all again in the event and request our moderator Mustafizur Rahman sir to moderate the session. Maybe we may have a sort of introduction we know about the participants. So I am requesting Mustafizur Rahman sir to moderate the session.
Thank you. Welcome to this very important discussion. Thank you, Dr. Yusuf. Thank you for taking this initiative. FES and RAPID, I think, should be congratulated for organizing this expert group meeting, which is very timely. As Dr. Yusuf mentioned, we are waiting for joining the MC12 in Geneva in November, towards the end of November. And this is a very opportune time also to discuss some of the trade issues. But the distinctive feature of today's discussion is that trade issues is just not economic issues. We will have to look at it from a broader multidimensional perspective. And that's where today's discussion is very important, because trade takes place amongst countries, and countries have relationship beyond trade. It's economic, it's geopolitical, it's geographical, it is political. Economy is also connected with inter-country relationships and interfaces. So from that perspective, taking a multidimensional perspective on trade issues is very important. And we must congratulate Dr. Razak, who has taken up this challenging task of looking at the trade issues from a geoeconomics broader perspective. We are very happy and I would like to join Dr. Yusuf in welcoming Dr. Shamsul Alam, our Honourable State Minister for Planning. We have interacted with him in many platforms, and his attitude although he has joined as a minister, but I think that first and foremost, he remains an academic, and his constructive engagement with experts and civil society is something that we have always admired, and we do hope that his interaction with us will continue in future. But let me also join others in wishing him all the best in his this very high responsibility. And as always, we are there if there is any need for any consultation, any opinion from our side. We are always there, and I think he knows it. We have been joined by a very distinguished set of panelists. We have academics and researchers, we have government officials, and we are expecting from Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of Commerce. We have representatives from development partners, media. So we are also looking forward to a very interactive discussion after Dr. Razak has presented his paper. And this is also an opportunity to really appreciate the enlightened role of FES, which brings with it progressive social democratic ideas and ideals. And I would like to join Dr. Yusuf in also expressing our deep appreciation to FES office in Dhaka for supporting this study. As I said, this is very, very timely. And as we go forward, beyond the pandemic, we try to build better. We must take into cognizance the geographical context and the geopolitical features in which Bangladesh will have to go forward beyond its LDC graduation period. So this is very important that we have this discussion where so much is changing around us. So I would like to invite Mr. Felix Kolbitz, resident representative, FES Bangladesh, to say a few words before I bring in Dr. Razak to come up with his keynote presentation. Felix, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mustafiz, also to Dr. Yusuf for hosting this event today. Also, thank you already for moderating this event. I'm Felix Kolbitz, a resident representative since April of this year for the Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung here in Dhaka. We are a political foundation funded by the German government, among others. And what our aims here are with this study is that we see that geopolitics and with this also geoeconomics have become a very important topic for the Indo-Pacific area. What I see is that we have a number of states around the world focusing more on the Indo-Pacific area. Germany and France have come up with individual strategies. The EU is working on one. The UK has just recently published a strategy for the how to deal with the Indo-Pacific. But we also see something that Asia as a whole, if you look back over the years, is home to some of the largest militaries in the world, some of the most protracted political, ethnic, and territorial conflicts. Shaping the Asian future, the continent has also been a subject to global and regional power rivalries, which are now setting the parameters for competition of the future global order. As I just pointed out, it's not only something where you look at the continent, but global players are trying to get a hold. And I think in this context, FES has developed this regional project called Navigating the Asian Century, the Strategic New Normal and the Global Order of Tomorrow. The objectives of this program are trying to put a spotlight on the rapidly changing geopolitical and geoeconomic environment across the Asia-Pacific region. It examines the key trends impacting national development paths and offers a platform for countries to unpack ideas and strategies on how to navigate the unfolding strategic new normal. The program analyzes major regional and global dynamics at play, and together with a diverse set of partners, seeks to develop innovative solutions and policies to jointly move beyond a zero-sum logic. As pointed out already, geoeconomics is a rather recent term. I think it was coined in the early 90s, which tries to also think as economic tools for strategic advantage. And if you look at recent years, I think the trade wars that have been started under the Trump administration, China's use of economic influence around the world, also the most recent examples of vaccine diplomacy, all are part of this geoeconomics idea. On the current trends and changes in geopolitics and geoeconomics, FES Bangladesh has taken initiatives to engage Bangladeshi experts and distinguished people to talk on these unexplored areas, which are very important for the country's upcoming development path. Bangladesh navigating through these challenges, but its economic model need to be reconsidered and diversified. LDC graduation, as it has been mentioned already, is probably a milestone in a marathon, in order to use a quote from the study, but also need to reform as an economic model that relies heavily on tariff-free export of RNG to the West. Adjusting trade and finding meaningful free trade agreements is probably one of the challenges that Bangladesh is facing in the upcoming years. So last year, Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razak has written a paper on the same topic of the webinar and presented findings in December. At that time, in the presence of the Honourable Commerce Minister, Mr. Tipu Munshi, as Chief Guest and Commerce Secretary, Dr. Muhammad Jafaruddin. As a special guest, the webinar was well attended by more than 60 economic experts. Now Dr. Razak has updated his findings and is presenting it in today's webinar. So we are delighted to welcome you in this expert group meeting today. We are also very grateful to Dr. Shamsul Alam, Honourable State Minister of the Ministry of Planning, for giving his consent to participate in this webinar as our chief guest today. We are also thankful to Professor Mustafizur Rahman, Distinguished Fellow, Center for Policy Dialogue, for agreeing to moderate the session. He's a long, well-timed well-wisher of FES Bangladesh, and I'm looking forward to having you today again in our joint discussions. And then Dr. Razak and Dr. Yusuf of RAPID also called you to take this issue, as they found so much important for the country as well as for the region. We are indebted to them. And we are happy also to welcome all panelists of this webinar. Your interactive discussion will enrich us and guide us to the policy stakeholders to push this issue ahead for the benefit of Bangladesh. So I'm very grateful to everyone who is here, and I wish you a very successful and fruitful discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Felix. Thank you for those words of welcome, and also reminding us that as we navigate the 21st century, which you have mentioned very rightly, the Asian century, I think that it's very important to also understand where Bangladesh does stand in the Asian century. Will it bypass Bangladesh, or we will be well integrated into the Asian century so that we can make it work for the development of our country and our people in the coming days? So this is very important, and we will be looking forward to hearing from Dr. Razak, who, as Dr. Yusuf has already mentioned, is one of our leading economists. He has done very important path-breaking works on trade issues, on economic issues of economic development and challenges facing Bangladesh. And we do look forward to hearing from him with regard to this path-breaking work, which, as Felix has rightly mentioned, it's not very much studied, but is becoming very important for economies like ours as we go forward. Because, as I was mentioning, the interface between economics and geography, and trying to understand the complexities in which these two relationships operate is becoming very important as we go forward. So over to you, Dr. Razak, in about hopefully 15-20 minutes.
So thank you for that very kind introduction. Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Shamsul, State Minister for Planning, and other distinguished participants, a very good morning to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank Friedrich-Ebert-Stiftung for asking me to undertake this particular study. And I would also like to thank all of you for your kind interest joining us this morning. I hope you are able to see the slides that I'm going to take you through. Before I make the presentation, let me tell you precisely what it's all about. Has already been pointed out by Dr. Yusuf and Mr. Felix as well. The point is very simple, is this: world trade and the forces of globalization are currently passing through some disturbing or turbulent times. It is not only COVID-19, actually, it started much before that, but the COVID-19 has added a new dimension to this. And the problem of geoeconomics is this: as political rivalry intensifies, the countries that tend to flout with multilateral trade rules. And now for a country like Bangladesh, which has done so well and is now looking forward to its LDC graduation, it wants to benefit from the global trading system. And if the countries, they are going to undermine the multilateral trading system, then the question is how we're going to deal with this. So that is basically the subject matter of this particular presentation. Now, let me start by saying that if you have gone to purchase a computer recently, a laptop, you must have noticed that the price has increased, quite significantly. In fact, I'm trying to buy a laptop for my son, who is now going to uni in the next couple of weeks. And I find that the prices are, quite, expensive, and they have gone up quite significantly. Over many years, we have seen the computer prices falling. All on a sudden, it has started rising. Why? One issue is, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the supply chains. If you would read through the newspapers, you will find a lot of stories saying that the chip shortage is going on. And for that matter, I think 2 or 3 points have been highlighted. One is pandemic-related disruptions, then US-China trade war. So, the countries are repositioning themselves in that particular market as well. And the drought in Taiwan, because these kind of chips, it requires a lot of fresh water. And that drought in Taiwan has resulted in its curtailing the use of fresh water. So all these things have contributed to this price rise or price hike. But this problem of trade tensions actually began much before COVID-19. We should not forget that. But COVID-19 has aggravated the geopolitical rivalry. We saw the trade war between US and China taking place before COVID-19. And when the COVID-19 pandemic began, we heard these words: offshoring, reshoring, nearshoring. All these words mean, let's bring out the supply chain out of China. Okay, let's diversify the supply chain. So that has been the kind of tension in the global economy. As I said, Bangladesh, after our graduation, we would expect a strong, credible, rules-based multilateral trade system. And that trading system, we have one under the WTO. Now, this particular geopolitical rivalry or geoeconomic competition, which I'm going to define a bit later, it would imply that for Bangladesh to build the trade and investment linkages. Now, what do we want? We want to build new trade linkages, export new trading opportunities. We want to attract foreign direct investment for many different places. I think those tasks might be a bit challenging given the current dynamics. Okay, I think some of you may have heard the word decoupling of Chimerica. Okay, Chimerica is a term that was coined by economic historian Niall Ferguson while he was at Harvard. And the whole point of Niall Ferguson is this: the global trading system took a route where the United States has been working as the tech headquarters with the technologies going and taking to China, and China being the manufacturing powerhouse of this kind of international production system, right? So that's what he called Chimerica. And if you would look at the picture that we have got here, the chart, then you will see that just prior to the COVID-19, China became the world's largest manufacturer. As you can see, close to 30% of total global manufacturing was due to China alone. Now, when the COVID-19 crisis began, and all on a sudden, the Western countries, they realized that all supply chain is based in China, and that caused a bit of concern, the security concern, and the concern about during the time of emergency, how those international trade relationships will be maintained, and the security about protecting their own consumers. So all these then tensions mounted, and these actually fuel the current round of geopolitical rivalry and the whole idea of how to deal with this. Now, as Mr. Felix has already pointed out, geoeconomics is a relatively new term or new concept. It generally being perceived as countries using economic tools to advance their geopolitical objective. Okay, Bangladesh can use a trade policy objective, economic policy objective, but Bangladesh doesn't have any geopolitical ambition. Okay, so then that will not be counted as geoeconomics. When tools are being used to protect their national interest in a geopolitical fashion, then it becomes geoeconomic. Now, no consensus exists until now, but let me tell you two particular definitions. One is due to Edward Lutyens, who in 1990, in a famous article here, he used the term geoeconomics. But if you look at the subtitle of this article, he mentioned logic of conflict, grammar of commerce. I think we don't need to go beyond what he wanted to mean. But the whole argument of his thesis was that war or the military conflicts are going to be very expensive. So that is why the countries will look up to other means of engaging, so that they can have their influence delivered or projected. Okay, that was the whole idea. Now, after Edward Lutyens, I think very recently there was another publication, quite influential one, is by, as you can see on the right, there they say geoeconomics is nothing but war by other means. You don't fight the war in the battlefield, but the other war is going on, and that is geoeconomics. Now, the question is geoeconomics new? Many people will tell you that even the Marshall Plan, the picture you were seeing on the left-hand side of your screen, the Marshall Plan the United States did to rebuild Europe after the devastating Second World War. Right? And many people now are reflecting, they're saying that that was also a geoeconomic move by then the newly emerged economic superpower by the United States. The same thing now China is doing under its Belt and Road Initiative, the picture you are seeing on the right. So they're saying that geoeconomics is nothing new. It was always there and it is going to stay with us. Only the powers, they change. Clearly, it is the rise of China that is causing, all these heightened, tension. The picture on your left, as you can see here, this is how China has catch up, quite fast, in terms of the absolute GDP measured in US dollar. There is still a way to go. There have been some projections that catching up, China's catching up with US in terms of absolute volume of GDP. They're saying that it is going to be faster because of the COVID-19, because as you know, when the whole world had negative growth, China managed to grow in positive terms. So that will help them catch up. But if you think that when GDP is measured in terms of purchasing power parity, that's what economists do to reflect the cost of all other goods and services, then you find that essentially China has already exceeded the US in terms of being the world's largest economy. But having said that, I should also remind you that China has also got a very big population, and that means per capita terms, the per capita GDP of China is still much lower than the United States. That is something I think we should be mindful of. But with this rising China economic GDP growth, China is also projecting power. That's what the Western developed countries think. China is projecting power. And one is to think about the number of countries where China has invested. This is each red dot in this particular map is essentially Chinese-backed projects. And as you can see, the number of countries involved. And under the Belt Road Initiative, China wants to expand, its investment activities, trading activities. So that is also causing a bit of, tension particularly in the Western developed world. Honorable moderator and distinguished participants, I would also like to tell you that I think that we are going to see a lot of geopolitical and geoeconomic activity in Asia. Why? Because if you think about how the world economy has moved, if you think about the center of global economic gravity, and that center, if you consider, say, location weighted by GDP, then you will see that initially the global center of economic activity was in Asia. Then it moved towards the West and Europe and to the West. And eventually it has started coming back to Asia. As you can see in the simulation, from 1500 to 1850, started moving towards West, 1950, 1960. And after 1980, after the rise of Japan, as you can see, the economic center of gravity has robustly moving towards Asia, and it is going to stay there because of the rise of China. Not only China, think about Indonesia, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, all big countries are growing pretty fast, and that will make Asia as the global center of economic gravity, and all the geoeconomic power play will happen here. Now, the question is how then geoeconomics is going to affect the multilateral trading system. And I think this is what we need to give a little bit more focused attention here. You see, the current problem the United States has got is it is not sure, how it is going to deal with the rising China. Because traditionally, the United States never had a situation when they had both an economic superpower and also military superpower. Okay, when the Soviet Union existed, the United States considered Soviet Union as a kind of, strategic opponent, with whom a lot of military troubles, ideological fight will take place. But economically, the United States was in a much more, comfortable situation. Then you remember in the 1980s, when Japan grew, and there was a lot of, tension if Japan is going to surpass the United States, but US was not that concerned. Why? Because Japan was an economic and political ally, so it didn't have to be concerned about. So what did the United States do? It used the US Trade Representative Office, but it wanted to keep USTR out of its foreign policy objective. So that is why USTR was given a bit of an independent, status out of its foreign policy realm. And then the United States went for the rules-based multilateral trading system. So just to bring you the overall perspective here, US supremacy after the Cold War was established. There is this new liberal trade trade paradigm under the WTO. China and Russia, as you know, China, after 15 long years of accession negotiation for the WTO membership, joined the WTO in 2001. So they joined, including Russia. So in a way, the whole world thought it is now the time for multilateral trading system. Those rules under the WTO, that's going to matter. And United States, in the meantime, they focused more on some of the rogue state or non-state, terrorist activities, to make sure its security or to deal with this security concern, like Al Qaeda, ISIS, and this whole thing about Afghanistan was also a part of it. But now, then the challenge is, in the meantime, the global economy will see the rise of China, and that becomes a bit of concern because China very fast, they surpassed the United States in terms of the exports of goods. On the left hand side, you can see in 2008-9, around that time, China became started having a volume of goods which is higher than the United States. Now, United States is a strong services exporter. So when you add goods and services exports, even then, China has now surpassed the United States as the world's major trade superpower. But then many people also argue that this rise of China that we have seen, that was due to WTO, because WTO gave credible rules and China took advantage of those multilateral trading rules. As you can see in this particular chart here, this is 2001, this vertical line up. And as you can see, after 2001, when China became WTO membership, how China's exports rocketed, right? Both to the whole world, but also to the developing countries. So that was a major kind of shift for the China to having. Now, also the question here is why the WTO is so important in ensuring or in giving China that kind of success. And many people would argue that partly because under the rules-based multilateral trading system, if there will be any disputes, that disputes will be settled by the WTO. And WTO has an independent process of settling those disputes. Any country can bring allegation against any other countries, and that in the process WTO will form the panel, which is generally considered to be fair, and also the appellate division can review the thing, and the whole process takes much a reasonably short time, within the 6 months to 1 year. Those disputes can be resolved through the WTO dispute settlement mechanism once the process has begun. Now, then many people within the US, they argued that the whole WTO system was against the US or other countries and favoring China. But to be honest, that is not entirely true. As you can see in this particular chart table here, of the 23 disputes that the United States brought against China, of those, it got ruling in its favor 11 times. China had made 15 complaints or disputes against US on 15 occasions, and only on 4 occasions, the ruling went in favor of China. So it was not the case that the WTO system was unfair, but that's not true at all. Now, then the question is the US allies, and also some people, they are arguing that the WTO system cannot deal with the state capitalism. And many people say that is the source of success for China. They are saying that the currency manipulation, even the manipulation that takes place, these things WTO cannot control or cannot take action against. But also many advanced economies, they think the labor and environment standards in many developing countries are not that good, and which is giving the rising or emerging economies a lot of advantage. So now they want to bring in new reforms. They call it reform the WTO, essentially to bring in new reforms. But as you all know, in a member-driven multilateral institution like the WTO, it is so difficult, to have these negotiations done and the new rules to be brought in. And this can be quite a lengthy process that we have seen. The Doha round has taken more than 20 years, still unfinished. Then the United States, it wanted to take a route, out of the WTO, so like in the form of mega trading blocks or mega regionals. As you'd recall, the US was behind the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Agreement, TTIP, for Europe, and then the Trans-Pacific Partnership under our TPP. Now, we have all seen then, due to 2016 election campaign, both the parties, they decided to walk out of the TPP. So the US left, as you can see on the picture on your right, but then RCEP, a Chinese-led initiative, eventually got materialized, giving China a bit of upper hand in this particular region again. Okay, so now the question for us, what the Biden administration is going to do about it. You would recall that there was a stalemate when the WTO DG was elected. And one good thing is the Biden administration has resolved that crisis, and the system is kind of, now has gone back to its regular operation. But one thing though, the key element of the WTO system, the WTO dispute settlement mechanism, in their appellate division, they should have 7 judges. But there has been a lot of blockage. The United States is not willing to confirm the judges. So right now they don't have anyone. So the whole appellate division is currently not functioning. If you look at the WTO website, as you can see on the left-hand side, the picture that I put here, and here the WTO is writing, currently the appellate body is unable to review appeals given its ongoing vacancies. Okay, it's mentioned on the WTO website. So there is a stopgap mechanism in process initiated by the European Union. It's more kind of arbitration among countries, to get around those conflicts. So the question is how the United States is going to change its stances on this particular issue. Okay, so that has become a big issue. Now, quickly moving on to the Bangladesh side, as I said, the LDC graduation, Bangladesh needs new trading opportunities. We must attract new foreign direct investment. Question is, what impact of geoeconomics? Huh? And this is something I have mentioned in this paper, almost like exploring opportunities in geoeconomic minefields. Why I'm saying this? This is because a weakened multilateral trading system, Doha, has not been materialized. There is a lot of tension going on. So this kind of weakened multilateral trading system has kind of, resulted in a heightened trade protectionism. We have heard the initiatives like Made in China 2025, Make in India, America first, and now the Biden is saying American workers first. I mean, these are nothing but protectionist agenda. If every country is saying that they are going to serve their own country, flouting free trade rules, then essentially there is no room for free trade policy options. COVID-19 has aggravated, as I say, and is now shifting the supply chains. So the one question is, if the supply chain can be shifted by that way through state interventions, then the similar kind of actions can also be undertaken against any other country. So that is something we need to be mindful of. And the issue for Bangladesh is, you see, Bangladesh is now going to WTO asking for the same kind of LDC privileges to stay on for another 10 to 12 years, and Bangladesh is asking that kind of privilege under the WTO. One question is, when the whole WTO multilateral trading system is going through such a turbulent time, do you think WTO will be in a position to give you a decision on these kind of more complex issue? The WTO history tells us that during the time of crisis, WTO become even more stringent. Like, countries that negotiated accession agreement, as you know, for example, Nepal, our neighboring country, they had to give a lot of concessions just because they wanted WTO members. So I think we're into that kind of a phase. So 3+1, the global geoeconomic powers. I said 3+1, 3 is the global geoeconomic powers. China, European Union, and the United States. +1, India, mainly in our regional context. So we need to be mindful of our engagement with those four powers. Of the, I think, four powers, the European Union has traditionally been less proactive. Many people would say that. But in recent times, we are seeing that the Europe is also kind of ramping up its geoeconomic strategy. One issue is, for example, when it signed the FTA with Vietnam, I mean, that consideration was in mind. Like, if Bangladesh is asking for an FTA, probably Europe is not going to consider it, for many other reasons. So that is something we need to understand. Now, with regard to the rise of geoeconomics, I would like to mention, I'm just towards the end of my presentation, I will take another 5 minutes or so. They're essentially, the rise of geoeconomics is like a double-edged sword. It can also give us a lot of benefits if we can handle it well. So one question is, suppose investment diversion is taking place because other countries are taking actions against China. And especially we have seen during the COVID-19 period, many Japanese firms, they left China. So the point is then, maybe Bangladesh can benefit, from that kind of a situation. We can attract that investment. Well, that is partially, true. But remember, as I said, if countries are unilaterally taking actions against, say, for example, China, so the same thing can also be done then against Bangladesh. Then the next issue is the geoeconomic rivalry, especially if you think about in our subcontinent, in Asia, if there is going to be the rivalry between India and China, so that could also mean opportunities for increased investment from those two countries, both China and India. They would like to invest more into our country to make sure that their influence is going to exist. But making use of such opportunities would require us also to avoid being victim of geopolitical rivalry. We all know what happened during the Cold War era. Those wars and conflicts would be fought in another country, and we must avoid that kind of situation again. Now, in terms of the geoeconomic minefields, we have seen the vaccine diplomacy by both China and India. But again, when in the question of Rohingya crisis, both China and India, they failed to support Bangladesh unequivocally because they have got interest with regard to Myanmar. China has been traditionally largest investor and trading partner of Myanmar, and India has also increased its investment and presence in Myanmar just to counter Chinese influence. In Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, we have seen the geoeconomic rivalry and those tensions. And in the paper, I have mentioned a few. And one example of this particular geopolitical tension and geoeconomic rivalry not helping us is the example of the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar, the so-called Basin corridor that got stalled over the fight of whether this is a BRI project or not. And India has its reservation because it just didn't want to participate in any of the BRI projects. Having said that, the one thing I would like to mention is this: despite this tension, if we are if we can handle judiciously, I think we should be able to get good trade deal with India and China. And I think our time has come for us to be more proactive and have a good FTA with both the countries and making sure that we have the best possible trade deals backed by investment. And this is something Bangladesh should try to have in the run up to LDC graduation and going beyond further. Now, just to summarize and provide you with a few policy implications, I think you understand what I'm going to say. One is, I would like to say, as Professor Yusuf pointed out in his welcome remarks, is that we need a reinforced integration of three things. One is our foreign policy, trade policy and economic development objective. And we're really glad that, Professor Shamsul Alam is here, because in our planning document, we need to have, this thing reflected. We need to advocate for a rules-based multilateral system. We're not saying that reforms are not needed. Of course, WTO needs reform. This kind of a lengthy process of negotiating even a small deal should be avoided. So we need to be proactive in that. I think maintaining productive relationship with China and India would be extremely most vital, these days. We cannot, avoid doing that. We have to maintain a good relationship. Having said that, we need to avoid falling into a trap where we become a bit of, we fall into China or India's power orbit. We must avoid that particular issue. But we need to proactively pursue our favorable trade deals with China and India that I've pointed out. We need to have an open mind about the kind of investment we're getting both from India and China. As you know, when you get investment or other kind of financing from multilateral institutions, those go through quite rigorous procedures, like in terms of the due diligence. China, India's kind of technical assistance or financial assistance, we cannot be shared. They don't look into many other issues like whether a country will have difficulty in paying those, and also the effectiveness of the assistance that are being provided under many bilateral deals, that might be available from India. We need to be careful. So we need to assess the debt unsustainability. That is the issue. One thing I would like to mention is this: if we are in a position to have and settle outcome of our trading relationship with the European Union and UK after LDC graduation, that will give us a lot of protection from this geopolitical rivalry, because almost 2/3 of our export market is in Europe and UK. So if we can secure that market, I think we'll be much stronger. So this is something we need to think about going ahead. My final point will be, we need to build and invest in our diplomatic and trade negotiation capacities. Perhaps it has always been important, but it is now more important than ever, given the rise of geoeconomic power play that we're seeing in this Asian continent. I think I'd like to stop here. Thank you so much for your kind and patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Razak, for your very insightful presentation. I think that we can read it through the prism of Bangladesh's concerns and interest in going forward, and get a lot of very useful policy directions from your presentation. You are very right that, and you have taken a historical perspective in the beginning, and you have very rightly mentioned that that the center of gravity is, now that it is shifting towards Asia, is just a déjà vu. Because you are very right. I was looking in preparation of this meeting at a book by Paul Baroque, who estimated the GDP in 1700. Indian GDP was $75 trillion. China's was $83 trillion. Compare it with France, 19, Germany 13, and England 11. So you see, it was an Asian century at that time. But then colonialism, post-colonialism, and now it's once again coming back to Asia. That's very, very interesting. And as Razak has very rightly mentioned, that in this Asian century, how we will have to navigate. My take will be that all routes matter. I think that our unilateral initiatives, our bilateral relationships, our regional arrangements, and also our participation in the multilateral systems, all these routes will have to come together, and we'll have to make it work for Bangladesh. And as Razak mentioned, the economic, foreign relations, geostrategic, all these. The triangulation of all these forces will be needed. Now, it's true that we see both centrifugal force taking out, and centripetal force, which is bringing it together. So both these are very much there. We see the multilateral rule-based system is not dead. Maybe the appellate division is not working, but other negotiations are progressing. We may have a fisheries subsidies agreement in MC12. We may have some agreements in agriculture, agreement on agriculture. There are discussions going on investment facilitation. So I think the WTO, we should remain engaged, as Razak also mentioned, but at the same time, obviously, we will have to also make good use of the regional opportunities. And I very much agree with Razak that India, China provide us with enormous opportunities of closer bilateral cooperation, and for that we will have to deepen the 5 connectivities, as I say, trade connectivity, investment connectivity, transport connectivity, logistics connectivity, and people-to-people connectivity. I think if we can make these work, then Bangladesh can take advantage. And as Razak rightly mentioned, that, for example, Japan is shifting from China. We know the 70% of imports to China, to Japan, was made by Japanese investment in China, and now they are shifting. Not surprising that in Moheshkhali and in other parts of Bangladesh, Japan is coming up in such a big way, and I think Bay of Bengal also provides us with an enormous opportunity. And I always say that our territory is not 144,000 square kilometer. It is 262,000 square kilometer, include 118,000 square kilometer of our sea territory. So I think that these are very, these are new opportunities which we will have to be very actively engaged. And the pandemic has added, and I would like to add, Razak, that in the WTO, there is now a discussion with regard to the TRIPS waiver for vaccination. So there may be an agreement also with China, and India they have floated in the WTO. So I think that's a major opportunity that we can have. So with those few words on a very I think compelling presentation, I would now like to invite our panelists. As I mentioned in the beginning, our chief guest, we know that he's very busy. So Dr. Shamsul, if you would kindly let me know if at some point of time you would like to come earlier, then please let me know. We have many panelists. I am not sure if everyone is here. But Dr. Nazneen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Nazneen, I would like to bring you first. Everyone knows Dr. Nazneen, many hats. Currently, country economist, UNDP, but Nazneen is a senior research fellow at BIDS as well. Nazneen, you have heard Razak's presentation. So how do you, as an economist, look at the regional dynamics in the context of Bangladesh going forward? This is becoming increasingly important now, as Razak mentioned. So in that context, if in 5-6 minutes you would share your views, and if you have any advice, suggestion as well.
Thank you, sir, for your good introduction about me. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me, and especially I would like to, I'm very happy to see Dr. Shamsul Alam after taking his new position, because I was invited in several webinars where Dr. Shamsul Alam sir was chief guest, but somehow I could not manage to do that. But today it's very, I'm very glad to see him after this. Congratulations, sir. Whenever Dr. Razak makes a presentation, it's always in depth, and I always love to hear from him, especially this topic, geoeconomics, which is actually getting popular these days, but its people are not that clear of its implication on different economies. So in that sense, I'm glad that such a paper has been prepared and presented, and which has covered many issues. And as sir, you have asked me to comment on the regional relationship for Bangladesh. As Razak Bhai has already mentioned, that it's very important. We can't avoid our relationship with China and India. And I actually want to add what Razak Bhai said. I haven't heard first part of his presentation. I don't know whether he mentioned it there, because many other things are happening at this moment. We are graduating out of LDC status, and that also has very close connection with what Razak Bhai mentioned today. Because whenever we will graduate out of LDC status, we will be facing lots of challenges in terms of our trade and finance. And there, this regional relationship will be very important. How we act together with the region, not isolated way, because we know that our over dependence on one export sector, and that will have lots of challenges after LDC graduation. It will depend on how we expand our market, how we have our relationship with India and work together, because after we graduate, we will also have to attract lots of investment in various sectors for which currently we import the raw materials. For example, when we graduate, we have to, for our ready-made garments, especially the oven sector, we have to have our, because of the stringent rules of origin, we have to have our raw materials, textiles and others within the country. And then we have to attract FDI, and we have to explore markets in the region. So I think in that context, it's very important as sir, you mentioned the 5 connectivity, and there I think to me the trade and investment connectivity and the transport connectivity with India and China is very important. We have been talking about this development of the belt region. We have been talking about connectivity, and we have actually come a long way in that line, I would say. If I compare the situation 10 years back, there lots of things have been developed, but still I think the connectivity issue is very important when we think of the geoeconomics, we think of our situation when we will graduate from LDC. In that context, I think it's very important how our ministries work together. It's not, I think coordination is very much necessary there with the leadership of different ministries on different aspects, but coordination is very much necessary. And as I now work with UNDP, currently we are working very closely with the government on LDC graduation, how development partners can support a smooth transition. And there, I think when we are talking about geoeconomics, we are talking about improving our relationship with the region. I think it's also very important how we utilize all the resources we have, resources also in terms of taking the supports from the development partners, how we actually take the support for very effective things, the things that are our priority. So that is very important, setting the priorities. I have seen that lots of things are happening, but it's very important to set the priority, keeping in mind our objective of a smooth graduation from LDC, at the same time having in mind the 2030 agenda of achieving the SDG goals, so that we don't leave anyone behind. So in that sense, I think that the regional relationship in terms of trade, investment, and also especially in terms of market access, it's very important. We need to work together. And I just will say one point in 30 seconds, that's is very important to invest in negotiation skills because that will be very important after we graduate from LGC, and as has been mentioned, for negotiating bilateral trade relationship, regional trade and investment relationship. So I think we need to invest more when government is investing a lot on skills development. I think development of skills towards better lots of human capital who are expert in different kinds of negotiation, including the climate negotiation also. That is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nazneen. Excellent. I think that your emphasis on LDC graduation and looking at it, our discussion from that perspective and prism is very important. We will have to have smooth graduation with momentum, and sustainable graduation. So from all those three angles, I think what you have mentioned is very important. Bangladesh will have to make a very crucial transition from preferential market access driven competitiveness to productivity and skills driven competitiveness, as I was mentioning in one of my my studies. And from that perspective, I think that what you have mentioned, that triangulation of trade, investment, and transport linkages is very important. Connectivity is a geoeconomic concept at the end of the day, and so from that perspective, your points are very, very well taken. Thank you, Nazneen. And also you have emphasized the need for negotiations. Dr. Razak has also highlighted that Bangladesh does need, I think, like WTO cell in the Ministry of Commerce, we do need a negotiation cell, and because the complex discussions and negotiations that await us are going to be very crucial and complex, and so and those will be non-reciprocal. These will be based on gives and takes. So very complex. So thank you. Do we have Mr. Fayaz Murshid? Fayaz, are you there?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Fayaz. Yes.
Sir, I didn't want to interrupt, but Professor Shamsul Alam, our chief guest, he has requested, that he should be given the floor. Thank you.
Oh, acha. Okay, fine. Okay, Fayaz, please hold on. Our Honourable State Minister, as I was mentioning, he has a number of things, and but I'm very happy that he could hear Razak and some of the other discussions. So I would like to request Dr. Shamsul Alam to share his thoughts, and we'll all be looking forward to hearing from him. Dr. Shamsul Alam, Honourable State Minister.
Sir, you need to unmute.
Alam, yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Mustafizur Rahman, distinguished fellow of CPD, and who is moderating this important seminar very efficiently. Certainly, I thank the expert group, and those who organized this important seminar on a very important topic right now. And I thank very much Dr. Razak for presenting a very lucid and focused discussion on what will be happening in future and how we'll be facing the geoeconomics that is being emerged and emerging. So I heard quite, but due to technical glitch in many parts, actually, I was cut off because of my unstable internet connection here. So I would request the organizers, particularly Dr. Yusuf, if possible, to send me the paper, as it is very, very much oriented with policy issues and what Bangladesh should do. So I would be very happy if you send me the paper. Certainly, this was a very enlightened discussion, and it would be
We can't hear.
We can't hear. Huh?
No, we can't hear. I don't even see.
Dr. Alam got disconnected.
No. He's muted. Sir, you are muted again.
Oh,
Can you check, sir? Shamsul, sir, you are muted.
Dr. Alam.
it got
Yes,
automatically muted. I don't know.
I haven't done that.
No, I understand. But certainly, sorry.
Missed half minute or 20
Yes,
seconds.
please. Yeah.
Anyway, certainly during this pandemic situation, where we said in our 8th five-year plan that we'll be able to come up back in the original growth path after 2 years. So hopefully that may happen, I believe. And certainly we need to build back better. And in building back better, this discussion is very much pertinent and useful, I should say, in terms of policy suggestions. Dr. Rajak put forwarded. This need to be carefully taken. And certainly, as he said, and Dr. Mustafizur also emphasized that this will be the Asian century in the coming days, and where Bangladesh will stand there. Certainly, I am hopeful we are going well in terms of economic management. If you know, we are #1 country in South Asia in terms of our per capita income, in terms of socio-economic progresses. In South Asia, Bangladesh has already become a #1 country. So in Asian century, certainly Bangladesh should play a bigger role and should be benefited with the emerging, emerging China as a big economic power because of US-China trade war, if I say in that way. And certainly Bangladesh wants to get benefited from world trade, as enunciated very much in our 8th five-year plan that Bangladesh will be an export-led country in future. And in that direction, we need to redesign our policies. We need to make our rules, acts, laws, in conformity to health, that we can go with wide international trading. US-China trade war and Taiwan drought certainly will have impact on prices, particularly food prices. And in our own country also, food prices have been rising over the last couple of weeks. And COVID-19 also intensified US-China rivalry, no doubt. But to go to our original growth path by 2 years, meaning after the end of this financial year, 2020-21, we hope to be back again in our original growth path. That will need intense economic activities, invigorated economic activities in Bangladesh, and we have to take help of, again, international trade for our resource accumulation and resource creation in the country. And graduation from LDC also certainly will throw us in a new situation, obviously, after 2026. To face, we have to face some new tariffs that will be imposed on our trade. We will be missing some international support mechanisms, though those are not very much significant. Very much significant is our trade and our tariff situation. And Bangladesh also has to rationalize trade regime, has to rationalize tariff regime very much, because our average tariff rate is still higher than our comparator countries. So we need to carefully develop our export-import policies as such. For that, this kind of discussion will help us a lot in framing our export policy in future, export-import policies in future, as such our trade policy in future. And obviously, Made in China 2025, the slogan of Make in India and America First, all those are actually all those are signifying the economic nationalism that were quite enforced during the Trump regime. Hopefully, after the Biden who won the election, American election, they may have trade war with China, but as such, economic nationalism may not be so much acute in the future. We will go again in the globalization in full swing in future. This is a mere expectation. Hopefully, as Washington has failed, it was proven during 2008-9 economic depression. So economic nationalism also, or populism, will die down fully in future. But anyway, for us, for investment diversification, forex, investment diversification, we need to have export diversification. We are very much in a risk position, having dominance of only one product. Export in different in sectors and subsectors, particularly pharmaceuticals, particularly in leather goods, particularly in jute.
মিউট হয়ে গেছে স্যার, আবার মিউট হয়ে
নাকি
গেছে।
হ্যাং
এক
হলো
সেকেন্ড,
নাকি
আবার না মিউট হয়ে গেছে।
Okay, sorry.
আবার ঠিক হয়েছে।
We have to look for more areas for exports, particularly was what I was saying, exports in pharmaceutical, exports in in leather, in agricultural goods, processed goods, and electronic goods even. So for that, how we proceed, we need to have that kind of suggestions or that kind of recommendations in future, and we need to go with the rules-based multilateral trading system, of course, obviously. But one thing perhaps I missed, or whether Dr. Rajak covered it or not, I don't know. How about Quad situation that is emerging? How Bangladesh should face it? Whether Bangladesh can enter into it, I don't know, and what the impact will be on economic areas. We should engage intimately with WTO, no doubt about that. And Bangladesh so far over the last decade, tuning her economic policies in a way that benefit us, and that is the reason why we received more Japanese investments in Bangladesh nowadays. We had good relations in India, and India invested around $7 billion in Bangladesh, and a proposed investment in Bangladesh, but we could not utilize the full amount yet. That only 6-7% are utilized what they committed to us. So trade and development perspective is bright for Bangladesh, if I say in that way. Bangladesh's macroeconomic policy is tuned to this emerging situation very much, I feel. So particularly this study at this stage, really, I feel quite encouraged, and it could be better if I could continue with you with luminary discussions in the seminar. But at this stage, I should stop and look forward to final recommendations or meeting outcome or record notes, including the paper of Dr. Razzak. I will go through intimately if I get it. I was quite distressed a couple of times because of my unstable internet connection here. So thank you all, and I thank very much the organizers, particularly Dr. Abu Yusuf, who invited me to attend this seminar. At the first instance, I agreed because I know Dr. Razzak is very much, I think, competent economist at our time, particularly relating to trade, Dr. Mustafizur Rahman. So I tried to avail this opportunity, but would not be able to stay for the whole session. I feel sorry for that. Thank you all for inviting me. I was quite, benefit, I should say, if I say simply. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alam, Honourable State Minister for Planning. Thank you for the time that you could be with us. I think we have benefited from your remarks. As you have rightly mentioned, 8-5-year plan is our LDC graduation preparation plan, in fact, from one perspective. So this is very important that we implement the various strategies that you have mentioned in your statement. We will need to go for export diversification. For that, we will have to go for investment diversification as well. And geoeconomic factors will be very important in terms of attracting those investment, getting the market access. And you have very rightly mentioned that it will be on a basis of give and take, not non-reciprocal, but reciprocal. So we will have to be ready also to take the initiatives. You have mentioned about high tariffs. So rationalization of tariffs and being prepared for getting into trading arrangements with our partners, all these will become very important. And you have also mentioned about our foreign relationship. You have mentioned Quad, and I would like to take that as a cue to bring in Mr. Fayaz Murshid Qazi, Director General, West Europe and EU Wing, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Fayaz, if you could share your thoughts with regards to the various regional initiatives that are being, there, the BRI, Maritime Silk Route, which the USA is pursuing. We have seen the RCEP, where India didn't join at the last moment. So taking all these together, how do you see the foreign relationship which is evolving? And Dr. Razzak also mentioned about balancing China and India. So from your foreign ministry perspective, our foreign relations perspective, are we getting ready to navigate these complex relationships so that we can advance our economic interest?
Thank you very much, sir. Assalamu alaikum. These are difficult questions. Not very easy to answer. And it's always a challenge, of course, to speak after very distinguished speakers. Especially, I think the Honourable State Minister has already spoken for the government. There is nothing much of value, perhaps, that we can add. But then again, thanks to Mr. Klobitz for the invitation, and of course to Dr. Razzak for his excellent presentation. I have read through the entire paper. It's 30-page long. It's not too long, but full of a lot of good insights and recommendations. So thank you very much for that. I would probably start, sir, by just pointing out that Bangladesh at 50, what we can see, at least from the Foreign Office's vantage point, that we are getting a lot of attention, not just for geoeconomics, but also probably for our growing geopolitical significance in the regional context. If you look at our immediate neighborhood or vicinity, you would probably see that Bangladesh is being counted as a politically stable country by itself, and also an important stability provider in the region. We are surrounded by pockets of instability, but in the midst of that, we are managing with a population of 160 million. Even during this pandemic period, we have given shelter to more than 1 million people coming from neighboring Myanmar. It's been over 4 years now. We have not allowed them to traverse across the borders and create any kind of unrest. We have made it a point that our territory would not be used for any kind of hostile or adversarial activities against any countries in the region. These are important considerations, and that does show that Bangladesh has an important say in the geopolitical context in the region. And that is a message we are, of course, trying to drive home quite categorically. Recently, probably you have seen, since we are gathered here under the aegis of FES, probably it's pertinent to say that our foreign secretary was in Berlin last week, where we had launched our first strategic dialogue. And this week, we are going to London to have the 4th round of our strategic dialogue. So it's not just with our neighboring countries, even countries in Europe are taking Bangladesh into consideration for the geostrategic depth that we probably can bring into play in this regional context. The issue of regional cooperation or integration, as you have mentioned, I mean, Bangladesh has always been a big champion of that. What we have seen, even our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he had underscored the need for creating a zone of peace and stability in South Asia. And building on that, we have been pursuing the idea of SAARC, and we think that it was our biggest gift to the region. But unfortunately, due to many political dynamics, SAARC could not reach its potential. But we have not given up on SAARC, but at the same time, Bangladesh wanted to be more pragmatic about the whole thing. And as you can see that we tried to invest a lot in BIMSTEC and other sub-regional connectivity initiatives, which were mentioned during the presentation as critical building blocks for the regional integration. And as you can see, what's happening, not just in terms of transports or logistics, but also energy, water, maritime cooperation, we are exploring different frontiers to enhance regional connectivity. Although our Honourable State Minister was suffering from unstable internet connection, I think I should also mention cyber connectivity across the regions. And we do not only look at China and India as the major power dynamos or economic dynamos in our region. We think we should also take into consideration ASEAN as a bloc. If you take all these 10 countries together, that also provides a formidable force to reckon with. And with that in consideration, we are also trying to enhance our engagement with ASEAN. We have recently submitted an application to be counted as one of their sectoral dialogue partners. We are trying to identify, in consultation with ASEAN, what are the possible areas where we can have further enhanced engagement with them. So these are discussions which are very much ongoing. I would just clarify maybe a couple of points in terms of our relations with our neighboring countries. First is
Another issue is gender balance. Obviously, we know that RMG sector is very much, female-centered. 60 to 80% of the workers are females, but unfortunately, empowerment. So I think the large scale that probably small scale bilateral interests should be even more, but those issues, particularly where there are countries where there is a demand of R&D, there is a demand of female labor force, and also we know that we have a huge number of youth population, and we haven't actually worked much on that. And I was involved as a social and gender expert on several the economic zone construction. So that was a huge issue in making them skillful in regard to the international markets demand, because I don't think that the graduates we are producing at this moment have much actually in line with the international demand. So my focus is actually more on those issues, a skillful youth generation, human resource development. So I think that could be one of the areas that where we can focus. As a sociologist,
Okay. Okay.
so could you hear me, or I was disconnected? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I could hear you. Do you have any more points?
No, I think that's it, that I wanted to focus more on the micro issues and also, the bilateral relationships and focusing more on the social development issues.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Salma Akhtar. I think that you have taken our discourse from macro to micro level, which is also very important as we go forward. If we want to have export diversification, or if we want to build the special economic zones, obviously we will need to have the skills and human resources. So Bangladesh's economic development and taking advantage of our neighboring markets and regional markets will hinge on our ability to produce those and those professionals and workers of future, so that we can have a productivity driven economy, as I was mentioning in the beginning, rather than the preferential market access driven economy which we have been used to so far. And thank you for bringing the gender dimension to the discourse, because whatever you do, it will have to be inclusive. So that is very important. So thank you for drawing our attention to that as well. Thank you. Do we have Mr. Mohammad Anwar Hussain, Joint Secretary, ERD? Are you there?
Sir, Honourable with a meeting, sir.
Meeting, na? Acha. Mr. Mohammad Johirul Kayum, uni ki achen? LDC wing, LDC graduation wing, Ministry of Commerce. Mr. Mohammad Johirul Kayum. Achen?
Sir. Yes, sir. Actually, I will not add much. It's a very enlightening discussion, and we have had the privilege of listening to Dr. Razak in the Ministry of Commerce before. I was listening with much with intense interest and taking notes. What I really took note of, one point that he has mentioned in his presentation, of the reinforced integration of the three policies: foreign policy, trade policy, and economic development objectives of the country. And I think that is something that we need to emphasize on. I mean, as we have already embarked on our graduation journey, we have to work as a very efficient and cohesive team. And when I say we have to work as a cohesive team, it actually does not limit within the public sector or the ministries only. It has to be expanded to include our private sector as well, because I mean, much of the work that will be done and the challenges faced and how successfully we meet those challenges are our colleagues and actors in the private sector. And when we say our private sector, then we have, in fact, segmented groups. We have the exporters, and we have a host of factories who are basically covering the local market. Now, when we graduate and we face the challenges, and as we have a policy which will be an export-led growth, how do we face the newfound challenges after graduation? So are our local industries aware of the challenges that they will be facing? Because we have this objective of or the plan of signing FTAs and PTAs, and we have this tariff wall. So we will be reducing the tariff wall over time. And then the protection that we have enjoyed, our industries have enjoyed so far, that will not be there. So we have to actually make a comprehensive plan where, I mean, just like this reinforced integration of planning across the ministries, we also have this reinforced planning of the private sector across different sectors, the exporters, the local producers, and what about the consumers? I mean, we have never actually heard from the consumers because they are not a cohesive group. I mean, when we hear in different webinars or seminars, we hear from different chambers or from the different exporter groups. But what about the consumers? What is their expectation after we graduate? And when there are changes in the tariff wall, when, I mean, as we call it, tariff rationalization. So what I'd like to point out that we actually need an integration of our efforts, both from the private sector, the public sector, and also from the academia. Today, perhaps today's discussion is more academic in nature, but what I'm trying to say is that as we face the challenges of graduation as a country, we actually have to put the heads together. And when we say putting the heads together, we have to actually put on board all these three sectors: the private, the public, and the academia. I'll stop there, sir. Thank you for giving me.
Thank you, Mr. Qayyum. I think the points that you have made are very important because there has to be integration and reinforced connectivity, as you have rightly mentioned, and supported what Dr. Razak has also mentioned. Foreign policy, economic policy, trade policy will have to be highly coordinated, I think. And also, you have added a new dimension with regard to our domestic economy. And there, obviously, private sector is very important. And you have mentioned that there has to be a connectivity between exporters lobby and domestic market lobby, which is very important. I think that in many countries, exports are a logical continuation of the domestic market. If you can have scale economy within Bangladesh, for example, then you can also take advantage of that. And we are fortunate that we are a very large economy. It is almost $1 trillion PPP dollar economy. So domestic market is also very important, and that can be a very important springboard to get into the global market. So you harness the advantages and then take advantage of that and then get into the global market. So I think that coordination, as you have very rightly mentioned, is very important. And you are very right that there has to be a coordination of efforts of all. So from our civil society vantage point, we are always talking about that coordination and the importance of it. So being a government official coming out from you, it is also very reassuring that the government is also thinking along those lines. It's a national effort. It's not just a ministry effort or a government effort. Thank you for drawing our attention to that. Mahfuz, you have been waiting for quite some time. Dr. Mahfuz Kabir, Research Director, Bangladesh Institute of International Strategic Studies. BIS, are you there, Mahfuz? Dr. Mahfuz? Okay, we have lost him. So we have also, do we have Miss Ferdowsa Begum. Ferdowsapa, are you there?
আমি আছি আপনাদের এডুকেটেড বক্তব্য শুনছিলাম আর আমার নলেজকে রিচ করছিলাম
Miss Ferdowsa Begum is Chief Executive Officer of BUILD, as you know. BUILD is well known. Ferdowsapa বলবেন কিছু, please.
Thank you. জি, I would like to add some points only. Specifically some policy related recommendations, because in the paper there are some very effective and practical recommendations. I would like to add some and would like to comment on some.
Yes, so, in 5 minutes, please.
5 minutes, okay. Let me just allow to summarize the paper in a single line. It has mentioned very clear. Oh, thank you all. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, chief guest, and thank you, everybody. And also for allowing me to tell something and to raise some points. Actually, the paper very nicely summarized the whole issue. And I would like to mention only one point, is that weak multinationalism with the rise of geoeconomics would inevitably trigger a new bout of protectionism. And in that respect, made in China, make in India, and America first were the basis, aggressively pressed by China, India, and US. I think this is the summary and that we have discussed so far. So let me just allow to focus some practical issues and some reference of policies, mostly based on some emerging issues and at the same time the LDC graduation perspective, because you know that presently Bangladesh is working very closely. There is a committee, and the speaker from Ministry of Commerce has also mentioned that I think a number of issues are going on in that respect. And taking cue of this issue, we have identified and we have seen that there are two specific issues. One is that international scenario is changing very quickly, very fast, and at the same time, at the domestic level, special issues such as tariff rationalization, erosion of exemptions, and you have seen the speech of NBR chairman yesterday that I think their tax GDP ratio could have been 17% if there was no exemption. So this type of exemption, erosion of exemptions, the businesses is facing some extensive challenges unless there is an efficient and supportive bureaucracy which will lead them to reduce cost of doing business and at the same time, I think reduction of lead time. So in that respect, taking cue of these issues, and I would like to just refer some of the information used in the presentation, very, very relevant. One of the statement has been made by UNCTAD is that LDC graduation is not any winning post. Rather, it is a first milestone in the marathon of development. And at the same time, emerging geoeconomics could make the process even more challenging. And we have found that our export is very much depending on a single product. And let me just allow to give some examples. Say, while our export is $50 billion for the coming year, Vietnam is $290 billion, Indonesia $200, whereas Singapore, very small country, they have $390 billion. So we have to go a long way to be in a developing country, I think, club. So taking cue of these issues, I would just like to mention some of the, I think, recommendation that has been made in the paper, paper, very nicely written paper. One of the very important aspects has been mentioned that technology-intensive production sector attract investment from India and export to China. I think this is very much well said, but there should be some specific action plan because it is very much time consuming and it will take time to reach up to that level. I believe that if there could be some specific time-bound action plan could be helpful for us. And there is another very important issue is that there are a number of Chinese placed funds and also India placed funds and projects which has not been materialized. I believe that there is an extensive study should be taken up why we have not been able to use this placed fund. And if we could have used this placed fund, I think there could be, the scenario could be different. And not only that, what we have found is that China and India offered a number of, I think, attractive loan schemes and I think some project-related funding there, but these also could not be implemented. In that respect, there was a suggestion from the paper is that if there is there are some engagement to ensure enhanced participation of local investors. In that respect, I would like to add only one point is that in Bangladesh, while there are some number of mega projects are going on, a number of EPC, that is engineering, procurement and construction, EPC companies have been included and they are doing very good, but their, I think, activities, they are working as a deemed exporters, but their support and their contribution to the project is not being included as an export. If these policy, there could be an EPC policy, I think could be helpful to bring some development and support the country to show some improvement in the export side, and also at the same time reducing dependencies on the on each and every support services from the foreign countries. And also there is another example there that Bangladesh could also lobby and advocate for LDC extended support services has already been agreed for Bangladesh, say from the side of India and China, which could be extended after the LDC graduation. And there are some examples that this type of countries has already extended this type of support services beyond the time they have stipulated earlier. So there could be some advocacy and lobby in that respect. Let me just allow to add some 2 or 3 points, and I'll finish it right here. I would like to add, because Dr. Razzak has done a very good exercise, but I would like to add here that BBIN MVA could be one of the area where now it is BIN MVA could be explored because you know that we have found from some of the statistics that ADB has given and informed that for I think addressing the infrastructural financing gaps, LDC countries would require $26 trillion US. In that respect, I believe that infrastructure and logistics support services and BBIN IV MBA project would be explored. Not only that, Bangladesh Delta Plan can also be referred. There are lots of new areas and issues included here. And Quad nation has already been mentioned that some of the Quad members are also the member of the RCEP. And there is a specific proposal that Bangladesh could be benefited to be a member of the RCEP. And finally, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, I believe that this could give some extended benefit and support for Bangladesh, and Bangladesh should work in a coordinated manner for this type of activities. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for this, Apa, for bringing the private sector perspective to our discussion, which is always very important. And you are very right with regard to the technology intensive production, which was also mentioned by Dr. Razzak. And I didn't know about the engineering, procurement and construction issue. You have proposed an EPC policy
could be very helpful.
Yes, and also thank you for pointing out to the opportunities of support services in the context of our trade with India and China. And you are very right. The BBIN MVA is an opportunity to get into our regional markets also, but we'll have to invest a lot as you have rightly mentioned, the single window, interoperability of the systems, electronic data exchange, and trade facilitation. So all these will be very important as we move forward from the preferential access to competitiveness based trade. Thank you very much. Dr. Rudaba Shohid, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Dr. Rudaba Shohid is from Department of Politics, postdoctoral research fellow at University of York. Yes, please.
Hello, first of all, thank you for having me. And I'm seeing many people after many, many years some of them have given me great advice from my career. Yeah, so I was very interested in reading this paper, and I read it with a lot of interest, and particularly because I work in the international relations realm, and some things definitely stood out, and it was very interesting. You know, we are in the West, we are looking at the China-India balancing games that countries in the region in South Asia and Africa are playing, especially South Asia, of course. And some of them have gotten into debt trap with China, as it's called, but Bangladesh has been probably the leader in balancing these two countries. So that has been pointed out in this paper, and hopefully that is one lesson for other countries to learn. I think as we go ahead and our needs grow in the years to come, there are two things that I would like to point out. One is, you know, from my research looking at the other smaller countries in the region, Bhutan and Nepal with, you know, their electricity supply. I think when we have negotiations with India, we can bring that in because, of course, we have to cross the land border to go to these countries. So I think, you know, we can push for that in the near future, that as our country grows economically and we have greater needs for electricity, we can push that into discussions with India that we need Bhutan and Nepal to send us more electricity because that will be crossing Indian territories after all. The second thing is, as I have been talking to a lot of people across social media platforms, there's something called Clubhouse where a lot of South Asians are very active in. So one thing that came up from discussions with our neighbors in West Bengal is that a lot of them want to visit their ancestral homes in Bangladesh. So I think in that respect, we can have targeted tourism. I think that area can also be developed. So I think, you know, from the international relations realm, this is what I can add. Other issues like Quad have also been covered already, and that was also mentioned in the paper and the discussions that followed. So these are 2 points that I would like to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shahid. Thank you for those 2 points. In fact, the point that you have mentioned with regard to investing in Bhutan and Nepal for the hydroelectricity, in a welcome development, India has now allowed, you know, joint venture with third countries, which was a point of contention previously. So Bangladesh is now thinking of setting up joint ventures for hydroelectricity development. With regard to visits to ancestral homes, let me be a bit skeptic in the context that you see every day in Bangladesh, about 5,000 visas are issued from our side, you know. But there is no bar for Indians or West Bengal friends to coming to Bangladesh. But the other way, traffic is very small. So I think that our tourism departments also have their, you know, perhaps they should also encourage our neighbors to visit Bangladesh. We are seeing that the buses that go, they come with our own people. The trains that go, they come with our own people. So from the other side, the traffic is not that much. So India itself is a very big country. Perhaps Indians, they travel within India also in a large number, but we are not seeing the flow from that side. So I think that we should also try to also project the various attractive, places in Bangladesh, so that they can come and also they can visit their homes, ancestral homes, and also can combine it with other tourism, because people come with a number of objects in mind. So I think that we should develop our tourist spots also for international tourism. So thank you very much. Both the points are very well taken. Do we have Ms. Subarna Sarkar with us, Senior Assistant Secretary, Ministry of Commerce? Yusuf? Is she with us? Ashen nai na? Chilen. Ms. Subarna Sarkar. Acha. We also have others. At this point, Yusuf, if you have to guide me, is there anyone who can?
Sarkar is there.
Yeah, you are there? Please. Ms. Subarna Sarkar, Senior Assistant Secretary, Ministry of Commerce. Would you like to share some of your thoughts?
Hello.
Are you there, Achen?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Yes.
Actually, I was getting enlightened throughout the discussion that we had from 11. So actually, I don't want to add anything. Only I want to say there was a talk that the integration between the ministries before taking any decision regarding these type of issues. I think we are trying our best on this. That's our point. And from Ministry of Commerce, already our Kayum sir has talked. So I don't have that much to say now. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Subarna. Thank you. Yes, you are very right. With regard to coordination, we are also hoping that the high-level committee that has been set up to coordinate LDC graduation efforts, that will also provide a lot of coordination with regard to what various ministries and agencies are doing in the context of LDC graduation. So hopefully that will also help us with our coordination. Thank you. Anyone else? If there is anyone who would like to join the discussion, make a point, or ask Dr. Razak something, you are free to do that. Okay. If not, then we can obviously wrap up. We had an excellent, I think, discussion on an excellent paper. But before I make the concluding remarks, Razak, would you like to say a few words with regard to what you have heard, your reactions, or some clarification?
Sir, thank you. I think, we would all agree that this was a fascinating discussion. And to be honest, I'm I would say, a bit overwhelmed by the fact that here, Mr. Faisal Qazi, he has mentioned that he read through the whole paper, and the way the Firdausa Apa was making the comments, it gave me the impression that, she has also read through the paper. Sir, I know that, you have...
I have read through the longer version, although you have offered me the shorter version.
So you have read the paper. I know Mr. Zahirul Qayyum, he has also been very kind to read through the paper. So in a way, to be honest, I didn't expect that people to read through the whole paper and discuss the recommendation. It's a great success. And to be honest, I'm a bit overwhelmed, seeing, that kind of a reaction coming from our distinguished panelists. And also there is something for FES also to be happy about, like, the work we do And Bangladesh as a country, as we move to that critical juncture of LDC graduation, seeing the global landscape unfolding in a profound way, I think it's quite heartening. So to conclude, I would like to make a few quick comments. I think that way I can also be able to respond to some of the issues that have been raised. I cannot respond to all the issues, partly because I do not know all the answers. I'm not an international relations expert. I'm more on the trade economist side, if I can put it that way. But having said that, first of all, with regard to our DJ, Mr. Fayez Kaji, and also our colleagues from the Ministry of Commerce, I would like to say, Bangladesh, we have now a serious scope of proactively pursuing trade strategy, where essentially we can use LDC graduation as a kind of our focus and also leverage in asking for different things from different countries. Let me elaborate this to you. So if you think about the two major trade deals that we're talking about is India. There is already something going on, a joint study going on to undertake a feasibility study of Bangladesh, India, a comprehensive partnership agreement. Okay. But especially, Mr. Kaji, I would like to alert you to this, why we could not explore the possibility that when India offered Maldives duty-free market access privilege even after its LDC graduation. So there is a specific clause, in our SAFTA agreement that was made just to provide that facility to Maldives. So given the current situation, I think we should ask India, we will negotiate, that particular agreement. And as you've rightly pointed out, sometimes negotiating such deals will take a long time. So maybe for the time being, we could ask India just to follow the precedent. And in international trade negotiations, we always follow precedents. And just allow Bangladesh to have this current Indian market access in an extended manner. That's it. That would solve our problem for the time being. So that's number one. Number two is, with China, my view is, I think we are not proactively pursuing a possible trade deal with China. Again, with China as well, we can have that kind of strategy. We can say, fine, in 2026, our LDC graduation deadline, can you extend the similar terms and conditions that we have? But let's also negotiate a trade deal. So thereby, part of our work will be done, and other people will not take it, in that way that Bangladesh is trying to gain by playing the geoeconomic cards, because Bangladesh can always say, we are heavily concerned about our LDC graduation, the prospects and what the future holds for us on export success. So I think we need to use it, cleverly, and we have tremendous amount of scope. Similar thing with regard to, say, European trade policy, and there we have got now UK coming out of European Union, and as you know that the UK is currently reviewing its own GSP policy. Okay, so one thing Bangladesh could do, Bangladesh could engage with the UK very effectively and make the point clearly that the European Union current GSP system, those share criterion, if you can get GSP plus only if your export share in GSP is less than 6.5%. Bangladesh should engage with UK, say that is not any sensible criteria at all. So let's get rid of that. And if we're able to achieve that thing with the UK, that will immediately, give us a lot of, good bargaining power in a good way with the European Union, because that thing everybody is telling, that is something dysfunctional, and that is not the right thing to have those kind of import-based threshold for graduating LDC. So I think there we could be strategic, and I have given the example both from India and China, but also the European Union and UK, and we need to pursue those things. The second point is, about services offers, and I would like to mention that to you. See, when the global trading system is under pressure, probably it is not wise to expect that they will be giving us more preferences. That is not going to happen. And here I would also like to join what Professor Shahab has mentioned. I'll connect the two things. Professor Shahab asks, how far WTO reforms can go and whether this is going to be successful. Very difficult question. To be honest, we do not know. Because in the WTO, the things that are being called reforms, many countries might not be able to agree on them. You see, the problem, remember, the problem is not China. The problem is also many other developing countries, who are, according to some of the WTO members, who are taking less commitments but have become more competitive. You see, that is the main concern. Like even under EU GSP, if you think about the product graduation rule, they are saying that in textile and clothing, we have achieved global competitiveness, so we should not be getting this. So there is that possibility that we might get GSP plus, but if the GSP plus rules and provisions do not change fundamentally, Bangladesh won't be able to get duty-free market access on textile and clothing, even if GSP plus is given to us. I mean, if we have to follow the current provision that they have, so that will also require a bit of changes, and we need to pursue quite hard. So my point is, whether we haven't heard anything either from Minister of Commerce or Minister of Foreign Affairs, like what has happened to the Chinese proposal of having an FTA with China, why we're not making progress. And because I thought the right kind of ambition for Bangladesh will be to have that kind of the process going on, but then also get into RCEP. You see, RCEP can give us a tremendous leverage. I think one of the discussants, perhaps Professor Shahabanam, he pointed out some of the members of RCEP, they can be also Quad members, and in that way you can neutralize, yourself. Think about Vietnam, the strategy that they have taken. They were part of TPP. They are also part of RCEP. So that is quite a legitimate thing to do, rather than just bracketing ourselves like whether we're going to be a member of Quad or not. It's all our economic interest, illicit graduation, and that gives us a very good leverage, and let's make use of that. My final point will be that the point I think which has already been appreciated by everyone, but I see we need to do a lot of work in terms of having an integrated policy focus coming from many different ministries, because the time is now extremely challenging for Bangladesh. And I think given that we only have 5 years time left, even less than 5 years before illicit graduation, we need to be mindful of this particular timeline. We need to have certain things in place right now, because you see, if we are delaying, then say in the year 2025, our business enterprises, they will not know what rules are going to be there for, say, starting from 2026. And you will immediately see a lot of, adjustment challenges taking place. So I think for the ministry, the target should be like, go for a kind of a transition mechanism, so that our business people, the entrepreneurs, the investors, they know like, how the things will start, unfolding from 2026 onwards. And it is very important to give them that signal, I think, quite upfront. Sir, I would like to stop here. Thank you so much, for all your very kind words, and thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Razak. We had an excellent discussion. I would like to thank the panelists and obviously Dr. Razak. Mahfuz, are you there?
Mahfuz, kindly unmute yourself. Mahfuz, kindly unmute.
Mahfuz.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. I was in another meeting. I mean,
no. Mahfuz, quickly, sir. Dr. Mahfuz Kabir, Research Director, Bangladesh Institute of International Strategic Studies, BIS. He has done a lot of work on regional cooperation, FDI. Okay, Mahfuz, quickly.
Sir, I have just 2 quick points. I think the government, in terms of policy documents and front documents, I think the government is in the right direction, because in the 8th five-year plan, it has been clearly mentioned that the countries, in fact, especially in Southeast Asia and East Asia, for example, China and other countries like Malaysia, so they have interest, they have expressed their interest. So China is a big market in terms of illicit graduation, and there is a lot of, in fact, potential negative impact. So if we go through the, in fact, policy document, and if we implement it, then I think this is the right time, because in the initial years, so our preparation would be and concentration should be better than the subsequent years. So I think if the government starts right now, in fact, the process, because China is a big market, lot of, in fact, complications are there in terms of market access. So I think that would be a good start. If we start right now, then it will take a couple of years to get fully prepared for the FTA. So, and the second thing is that the integration along the value chain, I think that is also indicated by the 5-year plan and other documents. So I think the government has agreed and understood, but implementing the policy would be a challenging task. I think there might be a task force, in fact, for doing this. And there might be experts. Nowadays, we see that in the committee, in fact, the committee of LDC graduation. So the Prime Minister's the principal secretary, he's the, in fact, head. And there is no expert, in fact, in the committee. So that is a big thing, because traditionally what we do, I mean, we in fact involve the experts. So now there is no expert in the committee. So how we can integrate the experts? So that would be a kind of, in fact, consideration for the policymaker. I think that our state minister is here, so he can in fact consider how to incorporate the experts in the committee. So these are my points, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahfuz. I think both the points are very well taken. Obviously, it will have to be very intelligently crafted because these are very complex issues. So thank you for drawing our attention to that. And I would like to register my deep appreciation to all who have contributed to this discussion. Dr. Razak has rightly mentioned that we can ask our neighboring countries like India to extend, this, as he said, this type of market access was extended in case of Maldives. And also in recent times, Razak, China has extended the preferential market access to Samoa even after it had graduated in 2014. So that is another example that I found out by reviewing the documents. The other point is obviously that you are very right, GSP plus, and it's just not the 6.5%, but also rules of origin is also there. And is 66% of the products, not all products are covered. So there has to be, negotiations, and we should remain engaged because these are now being discussed and will be finalized before 2023. So I think Bangladesh will have to be very closely observing and providing suggestions with regard to that. Integrated policy, very right. Razak has once again re-emphasized the need for that. Hopefully, there is an understanding, and the government knows that it is very important that all concerned stakeholders are there when we are designing post-LDC strategies. Mahfuz rightly mentioned, 8th 5-year plan does provide some policy indications, but once we put them into actions, there the problems arise. And Bangladesh, as Razak rightly mentioned, Bangladesh can serve as a common geopolitical hub for the entire region, and it has also not only economic benefits. I also see the peace dividend. I read many years back when I was a school student that it said that if goods don't cross borders, troops will. So which means that there are also very rich peace dividends that we can have from that type of geo-economic perspective that Razak mentioned and others also re-emphasized. One point which Razak in his paper had just alerted us to, although Fayaz also raised that up, is the debt trap. I think that we should be very careful that we don't get into debt trap. Bangladesh is taking a lot of foreign aid because our domestic resources are not enough. There is a gap. We need a lot of money for infrastructure and other types of investment. But we'll have to be very careful because we are also making a second graduation. We have already made that, which is a middle income graduation from the low income country to a lower middle income country. And because of that, our cost of borrowing have gone up. We are no more eligible for the 0.7% interest rate of IDA of the World Bank. Now we are borrowing at 2.2%, 2.5%. We are now a blend country. So I think that we will have to be very careful also in managing our external debt, particularly. As of now, it's very good. It's only simple, a small percentage of our export and remittance earnings, but it's increasing gradually. I remember that 7 years back, it was $15 billion, our total foreign debt. Now it's more than double of that. So obviously, I think that Razak's alert is very well taken, if you ask me. Yes, Mahfouz?
Just a clarification, because now we see another document. I mean, vis-a-vis the ERD document regarding the foreign aid and foreign debt. The Bangladesh Bank also publishes another document, and I find it, in fact, dissimilar, in fact, kind of figures. And we find that, in fact, 58 or 60 billion US dollars. And there are, in fact, two components. One is the debt by the public sector and also by the private sector. So I think if we accumulate, I mean, just add on, then I mean the side would be different. And in terms of debt GDP ratio, then it would give a different kind of signal. So in terms of debt sustainability, I think we should also consider the private sector debt.
Yes, private sector debt and yeah. So managing the debt is very important. We only have to, as long as we are spending the money in smartly, as long as there are good returns, we shouldn't be concerned. But the investments, the targeting of the sectors, the economic and financial returns. So Razak's point, I think, is very well taken. So thank you. Everyone, you have been with us for more than almost 3 hours. Huh? So, and your points and your suggestions are very well taken. Razak, of course, will be doing further works on this. I think that is merited. And I'm also would like to thank FES for supporting this type of work. These are very forward-looking studies with very important policy implications for our country. So these are very important, and the support is very well taken. Yusuf, would you like to add something, or should I close?
Yeah, you please close, sir.
Okay, Yusuf, thank you very much. RAPID is doing excellent work under your stewardship and under Razak's guidance, and all those who are involved with RAPID also deserve our high compliments. And once again, panelists, those who have spoken, those who have been with us for the last 2.5 hours, thank you very much, and stay well, stay healthy. Thank you.